Hi, welcome to the Nonprofit. So today we're going to take another trip to Florida. Oh boy. So our this story comes from USA Today. It is titled Florida's Political Shift Sparks Exodus. Proud purple state goes to angry red. These Florida residents feel unwelcome in a new Florida. And this was written by Tom McLaughlin on August 21st of this year. So, hey, guess what? Welcome to my dystopia, Florida. And the heat is on, and I don't mean just the weather. Only a few years ago, my state was once a purple paradise, but Governor DeSantis led the charge against what he calls wokeism, or as I like to call it, a dog whistle for fascists. Now we're burning a hot red like Satan's butthole. Let's dive into why marginalized people are encouraging potential visitors to not risk a vacation here, and many who can afford to getting the hell out of here for greener, more welcome pastures someplace else. The panel and myself have a lot to say about this. So on that note, I'm going to take it over to my friend Phil and get his opinion on this. Oh
okay.
boy.
Thanks, Helen. Ron DeSantis. Oh, okay.
It's great. You can fuck up his name.
Yeah. Don't care about people, clearly. And it's incredibly sad that he has the backing of other bigoted, racist people. They have passed an anti-wokeism bill, SB 1718. Now, some people might be wondering, what do we mean by wokeism? Ron DeSantis has a different definition for wokeism, but generally it means the behavior, and I quote, and this is from Collins Dictionary, online dictionary, the behavior and attitudes of people who are sensitive to social and political injustice. But Ron DeSantis, he has to demonize the term, and he is calling it a form of cultural Marxism. That's strawmanning Wokeism, trying to make it some form of communism, when it's not. Yeah. Um, and for those who might not remember because they're too young to remember exactly what is communism, it's basically a theory or a system of social organization in which all property is owned by the community and each person contributes and receives according to their ability and needs. That's the Oxford Online Dictionary. Right? And it seems as if this demonization of Marxism is actually a political screen to push a bigoted racist agenda geared towards LGBTQ plus people of color, immigrants, non-Christian teachers, union members, and students. And Dr. Richard, you want to comment on
Yeah.
this?
Oh, yeah. He's
Oh boy.
he's a nasty piece of work. I mean, the whole it's cultural Marxism. Well, firstly, cultural Marxism has its roots in the fine tradition of anti-Semitism, which I also suspect he's part of. And it's a load of rubbish. It's not at all what wokeism is. It's just got the word Marxism in it, so we can press that button and get the right kind of angry people to be angry. Oh, we can't have the Russians here. It's like, that's not what you. And this, it just baffles me. It worries me that it's kind of a testing ground, Florida, for what the Republicans would like to do if they got in office. I heard the other day about this 2025 committee, which are actually a cross-party committee of very nasty people who want whichever president gets in to basically create a Christian theocracy by extending the power of the executive from the presidency. And that makes me think, oh, that sounds just like a dictatorship. Great. What a great idea. And it's almost like they're looking at Florida and going, oh, that's what we should do everywhere. We should ban books but give people more guns. or something, because that way, whenever someone goes into a school to beat someone to death with a copy of a slightly racy novel, we can point at them and say, no more. Oh no, that's not what happens, is it? They're shot. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting confused there. I thought it was the books that were killing people. But the whole thing, I never trust anybody who says you should ban a book. Anyway, that's always a big red flag. You know, it's a one step away from a goose step. So, yeah, it alarms me, and it alarms me because I think if this massive group of think tanks manage to pressure whoever the next president is into doing a worse version nationally at a federal level, there's going to be some serious problems. You know, California secede, maybe. Who knows? Things could happen. What do you think, Infidel?
Well, you know, I had to say that your comment about 2025 and that whole thing, which is like a turnkey authoritarian setup from the top. Yeah. And that does seem to be what DeSantis is going for here. And I agree with your whole idea of Marxism being a low key, the Jews did it kind of thing, and reminding them just the good old days of 1933. We're seeing Jim Crow voter suppression on a level in Florida that's just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, they're limiting third-party voter registration organizations, which people of color are 5 times more likely in Florida to actually register through one. And so there's a reason why they're trying to limit them in their access to the rolls, also limiting their ability to get out the vote. This is a deliberate attempt to suppress the vote and to put in a system that works for them. No. Unfortunately, I have a real strong suspicion that whatever works for them is not that really works for us, and not just us being the ones of us on this panel, but the people out there in Florida. They're not serving the interests of Florida. We could go back and say we want to have the good old days, and really that is a buzzword in and of itself. But they're seeing a drain of teachers. When you're a teacher and you can't communicate with your students. When you can't talk honestly about slavery or gender, when the staff itself feels like it's constantly being watched, like their children themselves being monitored for doing something wrong, that causes a chilling effect for teachers, and we're seeing that in teachers leaving and not renewing their contracts there in Florida, and I can only expect that to be worse. What's weird is this is a state that is dependent on money from tourism. But they're making their situation worse with their anti-immigration bills, their hospitality industry, and their construction industry. Both are expecting to lose up to 10% of their workforce, and you really have to wonder how bad are these people at A, governing, and then B, deciding what other people need to do. I mean, when the judge ruled against this. They made the comment that the free state of Florida is simply not free to exceed the bounds of the U.S. Constitution. Well, we'll see if that is the case. It does seem suicidal for a state that's dependent on tourism to put up the "go away, we don't want your kind here" signs. But it seems like they've doubled down. They want people like that to leave. In Florida, slavery's good. Drag queen shows are bad. LGBTQ love is hate, and freedom is slavery. I did read that in a book somewhere before. But, truthfully, it wasn't 1933. It was 1984. Now, Helen, I know you're from there, so you're fighting the good fight every day. So where are you on this?
Well, I mean, I do live in the land of gators and sunshine and Mickey and also bigots. So lucky me. I know we talk about my state a lot on the show, and because it just confirms over and again the shit that we're sitting in. Those of us that are free thinkers, that are fighting against any sort of bigotry in the state, and it just feels like it's an uphill battle. And the thing about DeSantis, the rhetoric that he's pushing forward, is just a microcosm of what he would like to see throughout the country, and people on the far right want to see. So this is kind of like his test waters, and we know that Texas is doing the same thing. Like I said, they're having the worst dick whacking contest ever. Who can be the better fascist state? And it's just terrible. And And it's just like, what I find so frustrating that it's always the same rhetoric against marginalized groups. It's queer people, people of color, people that are of low income, not, or they just don't, or they can just simply just not have an education with no upward mobility. The classism also kicks into this.
Easy targets.
Easy targets, yeah, because they know that they are fighting an uphill battle and they're taking away their rights. And the more and more you do that, people start to, like, get kind of winded and annoyed, and they feel like they're just spinning their wheels, that, it's things are working against them. And I understand that feeling. As a queer person living here, I get it. And I get that feeling, but I have to remind myself that if you get complacent, that's when the fascists take over. So, and that's when we see ourselves rolling back to what happened at the beginning to the mid 20th century. So maybe we're not going to do that again. Maybe we should learn from our history, and because one thing we should learn from our history, to fight against people that want to marginalize and harm other groups. That's it.
Yeah.
And I am Ron DeSantis. He's always been a bully. I've been listening a lot about his background. He's always been a bully. He's always been a jerk face. So, I'm going to take a breather. Though I do appreciate, I'm going to say to all my people that are thinking about coming here, that watch this show, just don't come here. Just don't. I mean, I would love to have you here, but please don't come here. Anyway, Phil, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing is that this bill has led to a number of unfortunate situations. As Infidel correctly said, there are teachers that are exiting Florida, and this is going to lead to a big brain drain. And apparently, also, there have been witch hunts of LGBTQ paraphernalia on school premises. Imagine that! Wow. You have people feel their hands are being tied. It's creating depression among marginalized groups. LGBTQ plus feeling unsafe due to a decrease in acceptance level. There is fear culture happening in the classroom. Teachers are fearful and unsure of what to and not what to teach. You're getting restrictions on gender affirming care meds, right? And there's a lot of heartbreak and anger. And also, the Democrats are feeling kind of vilified due to the affliction that this bill is placing on them. And all of this has led to about three organizations issuing travel advisories. Yes, it's going to affect the tourism aspect of Florida in a really negative way, because they have issued travel advisories indicating that Florida is hostile towards the LGBTQ plus, the persons of color, immigrants, non-Christian teachers, etc. So this is really, really bad.
Yeah. And it's a classic example of I'm very careful with the word fascist, but if there's one thing that's from the fascist playbook, it's tell the people who are the oppressors that the oppressed are oppressing them. That's the trick. They say, look at these people. They're the ones causing all of your life problems. And these people aren't. They've got problems of their own, usually caused by these people. And it's that makes me think this is very fascistic. This is where this is going, this whole movement. And there's a couple of other things that bother me. Like, they're doing a classic thing. The UK had this problem that we did this thing where we stopped people coming into our country. We kept the immigrants out. And then somebody eventually whispered into our government's ear, but everybody here is quite old. So who's going to do, the jobs. And so when we realized that our Starbucks and our pubs and things had no staff in them, we started to make it much easier to get a visa, because we had to. And I could see that happening as well, or maybe not. And I worry, going back to the 2025 thing, one thing is they want to actually make it that any reference to LGBTQ plus people is pornography, and pornography is to be banned, which is just what? Any reference at all. So just being gay is porn, apparently, and ultimately you could be arrested for being gay. So we can see where this is headed if there's not a fight back. So I'm not entirely sure. I think actually we should have more people go to Florida and stay there and sign up to vote. That's the other way to do this. Get as many young people as possible. Have a flood. I say to America's entire LGBTQ plus community, come and live here for 6 months and vote. All of you, just once. Get them out. Destroy them. To see him brought down by that community would actually be a beautiful thing. So why not, eh?
Yeah.
I've got to say, you mentioned that 2025 issue. That's almost like a turnkey dictatorship setup. It really is very unsettling when you read what they're looking for. And I think you have a valid point. DeSantis goes right after this wokeism thing because it's something that's been preconditioned. The right has been preconditioned that wokeism is something we hate. You don't even need to tell us what it is. If you slap wokeism as a title on it, it's something that has to be terrible, and we have to be against it. Now, the truth is that there's an important warning to everybody here. Number one, it should be to the people who think that they're gung-ho. They're circle jerking to Jesus over this, and they should be warned to be careful what you wish for. Because on more than one occasion we found out that when you got what you wished for, it wasn't nearly as nice as you thought it was. It looked a lot nicer behind the window in a package. Living in this reality is going to be a lot more inconvenient, just like you mentioned. Who's going to actually do the work? And especially when you look at a place like Florida, it's an aging community by default. People retire there. People go there to die. So you need some younger people in there. And so when you start getting people and saying, hey, all the people that don't fit what we say is okay, including immigrants, shouldn't be here. Yeah, you might need somebody at Starbucks to take care of that for you. And maybe for once I'll actually have a positive viewpoint towards Starbucks. I have to admit, I'm coming from a somewhat anti-capitalist viewpoint, or maybe a little more than somewhat. You mentioned dividing the people with the least power. It's not the person who is in line with getting food stamps that's the reason why you're broke. You're broke for somebody else, and you're probably both broke for the same reason, and they're not broke, whoever they are. So maybe it's time we kick back, relax, and realize, what? Maybe the enemy are the people who are trying to tell us those people over there completely suck. Helen?
So, since we're talking about bigotry, I brought back the bigotry duck, David Duck, so he can call it out, because he does it well. So we're going to say thank you, David. Yes, there's bigots here, David. I know, David. So anyway, the one thing I do have a little bit of hope for, I was, and this is relevant because I was listening to a news story today, and they did Republican polling, and a lot of moderate Republicans are sick of the culture wars. They actually have real concerns, jobs, economy, concerns about social programs like Social Security and their Medicare, like things that actually affect them, like their families, and they're not so concerned about the culture war anymore. People that played that game are definitely going to the extreme right, and yes, they vote, but they're not as prevalent as people think they are. They're definitely too loud, and they're too opinionated. And I wish they would go back into the shadows when we all agreed that, like, you can't be in public discourse because you're jerks, and we don't like this anymore because we agreed that, othering people, it leads to very, very bad things, but I think that gives us a little bit of hope, especially those of us that are on the left, if we can kind of get together with those other voters and say, yeah, I have the exact same concerns you are. I have concerns about, wages and jobs and, social programs that, help the elderly and, making sure everybody's making a fair wage and all those things, and that they can live comfortably and feel like they're contributing to their communities. And those are things that Republicans care about. So if we can be like, hey, maybe we should fight the extreme right together and maybe join and find some common ground, because another thing that I have to remind myself is that yes, I am very progressive. I swing very left, but on top of that, I have to recognize that I probably have things in common with people that see the world a little bit differently than I do. I might want more social programs, but I might be talking to a Republican, though, that, moderate Republican, that it, hates racism, hates queer phobia, hates othering of people, but, their party, is all about, the free economy and everything like that. So there has to be a way to meet people in the middle. And I think we have to remind ourselves of that on the left, because one thing about the right, they're super organized. They vote. They go out, they bring people to their cause, and we need to fight just as aggressively and meet people where they are. That's what we need to do. That's kind of my feeling on this, instead of, sitting here just, being like an old woman that yells at a cloud. So, I think that there's something to that we have to keep in mind. And I'm going to talk to Phil, who's sputtering. He's so upset he's sputtering. His feed is very mad.
Yeah. This series is really hard, and it's when I thought about this person is running for or planning to run as president, and the implications for not just Florida but for the whole United States, and then of course they have the backing of SCOTUS. It is heart-wrenching that this is going to, if this person gets in to that position, it's going to cause serious problems for the whole of the United States and many marginalized groups, and it's going to affect the tourism of the United States. Because you see, sometimes what these guys don't realize is that when they marginalize certain groups, and if you depend on tourism, it is there's statistics to show that countries that have anti LGBTQ plus laws, or anti laws against marginalized groups, their economies, their GDP tends to suffer. They lose millions and billions of dollars in GDP. So I'm kind of really afraid of the United States. What's happening there? Yes, Helen.
Oh, Richard, please, we're getting to this end of the segment. So, give me your 30-second. This is all bullshit thing.
My 30-second. Yeah, this is all bullshit. Wokeism is bullshit. Wokeism is this weird thing. If you think about it, the people who say we're woke, one of their big complaints is that woke people cancel all the time and then they ban everything. So that should tell you everything you need to know, basically. The one glimmer of hope I'll give you is that as the great dictator said in that film with Charlie Chaplin, these people will eventually die, and the younger generations don't agree with the word they say. So patience may help. Sorry, infidel.
And the fact that Florida has a pretty old population has to make that a little bit easier and quicker. So on the bright side, well, I don't know if everyone would agree that's a bright side, but in all seriousness, so it is good to know that I do think that their poor ability to govern is going to get them in the long run.
Mm.
So we'll see how this plays out. Even if they get what they want, be careful when you get what you want. It's not always what it looks like. Helen?
So I do have some hope, even though it's really, really hard right now, because there are people that are looking back at their history. They know what's going on, and they're educated on it, and they're going, "Oh no, 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 no! We're not going to let this happen again." So, that gives me some encouragement, even with people, like I said before, that don't agree with me. They are also being aware of this and waking up to these bad ideas that are now infiltrating, things at the government level. And I hope that, people will mobilize and, actually get out there and do something about it, so we don't turn into the dystopia wasteland that of our, nightmares. So on that note, if you don't want the world to turn into a dystopia nightmare, you want to become more educated on topics, please consider looking for stuff above you or to the side of you, and click and become more educated and sub. Thank you.